Hey there, welcome back. This is our second tutorial on reverb. In my last video, we learned what reverb is, how a digital reverb works, how you can evaluate what a good reverb plugin should sound like, and some basic rules for applying reverb. In this video, we're going to learn how to work the controls on a reverb plugin. We're going to learn about some common reverb settings for different instruments, and we'll also test it out on a track to see what kind of difference it makes. First, let's pick up our diagram from our tutorial early on in this course on envelope. You might remember that when a note sounds, it doesn't last forever. First, it rises in volume, then it lasts a short time, and then falls back to silence. This rise and fall, we learned, is called the envelope. Most envelopes have 4 sections, as indicated by the 4 separate colors in my diagram: attack, decay, sustain, and release. During the attack, a note rises from silence to its maximum volume. Then it decays from max to some mid-range volume. The mid-range volume is the sustain portion. During the release, the note falls from the sustain back to silence. The reason I'm bringing this up again here is because these terms are used in the controls of a reverb interface. So here's a reverb plugin in Cubase. The primary controls on most plugins tend to be similar, so once you understand how to use one, you can sort your way around another with some experimentation. This is a pretty simple plugin. Some are much more complicated and let you model pretty unusual spaces like underwater caves. I just want to point out the primary tools and how to use them so you've got the basics under your belt. The main variable in a digital reverb sound is the decay time. This is what's called the RT60 parameter I mentioned earlier. That's the amount of time it takes a sound to drop 60 decibels below its starting point. In this plugin, it's called the reverb time. 2 to 3 seconds is about right for most lead vocals. The faster and busier a song, the tighter the reverbs need to be. Under 2 seconds and the reverb might sound hard. This is where some of the other parameters of the reverb will help make it sound more natural: diffusion, low and high damping, etc. Pre-delay is the amount of time, measured in milliseconds, before the reverb kicks in. Basically, the longer it takes the reverb to kick in, the larger the space you're simulating. That's because in a bigger room, it takes longer for reflections to reach listeners. The scale usually ranges from 30 to 100 milliseconds, so it's still a really short period of time. Using pre-delay can help clarify the sound by removing the start of the reverb from the direct sound of the instrument. Next, let's talk about diffusion. This affects the character of the reverb tail. That's the end of the reverb. A higher diffusion sounds smoother, while less diffusion can give you a more clear sound. Basically, diffusion emulates different types of surfaces in a room, brick walls versus carpet, for example. Damping adjusts the reverb time at high and low frequencies. Normal room reverb decays more quickly at high and low frequencies than in the mid-range. You can set the damping frequencies high, say 10 kHz, to simulate a hard surface room. Set it low, like 2 kHz, to simulate a soft surfaced room. That's called a soft reverb effect. Here we're given a percentage value. If you adjust the high damping knob, you're changing the amount of damping that's applied to the high frequencies. If you lower the damping percentage, high frequencies will decay more quickly. If you increase the damping above 100%, then high frequencies will decay more slowly than mid-range frequencies. With the low damping knob, you adjust the amount of damping applied to low frequencies. At 100%, no damping occurs. Values lower than 100% increase the damping. This means that your lows will decay faster. Above 100% makes your lows decay more slowly than the mid-range frequencies. So for both knobs, a smaller number means the lows and highs respectively decay faster than the mid-range frequencies. Above 100% or bigger number makes the lows and highs respectively decay more quickly than the mid-range frequencies. Here's the mix knob. This determines the blend of the dry or unprocessed signal with the wet or processed signal. If the percentage is higher, you're mixing more of the reverb signal with the dry signal. So the higher the percentage, the more reverb you're going to hear. Let's check out some of the presets, which are always very useful as a starting point. Let's load dark and long. Let's bypass the insert or turn it off so we can have a listen to the track without the effect.
Ce soir, le vent qui frappe à ma porte.
Let's stop our playback. Now let's activate the reverb and have a listen.
Me parlait des hommes mortes devant le feu.
As you can hear, the reverb time is much too long for this kind of music. Take a look at the reverb time. 10:31 is really long. Let's check out a preset that's designed for a vocal. Let's take a look at Smooth Voice Room. As you can see, our reverb time is 2, which is standard for a lead vocal. The diffusion time is also quite a bit less. Much less damping on the lows, and no pre-delay will give us a much more natural sound. Let's have a listen with this preset loaded.
Soir, le vent qui frappe à ma porte me parlait des hommes mortes devant le.
Slightly more natural, but still way too much reverb. Let's listen to it in context, though. Bring in the other tracks.
Ce soir, le vent qui frappe à ma porte me parle des hommes morts.
Let's reduce the reverb time and try again.
Des hommes morts devant le feu.
As you can hear, a little reverb goes a long way. Let's adjust the mix. Let's just crank it up high to exaggerate. Just test that out. And now let's bring it back down. And this is sounding much better now. Keep in mind, you might need to change the settings later so it blends in with the other effects you've placed on other tracks. Now let's talk about some commonly used reverb settings. Let's begin with drums. Try a bright plate or non-linear style. Length of the reverb can be from 1.1 to 2.5 seconds. Set your pre-delay around 20 milliseconds. For vocals, try a plate or a short hall style with a reverb length of 2 to 3 seconds, a pre-delay of 20 to 60 milliseconds. Again, for vocals, this really depends on the style of music and your instrument blend. This is a very subjective field, so you will need to experiment quite a bit with this. For your piano, try a hall or concert hall setting with a reverb length or time of 2 to 4 seconds. This will give you more room resonance. Set a pre-delay of between 5 to 50 milliseconds. This really helps give you more room resonance. For an electric guitar, use a room or plate style with a reverb time of 1.5 to 3 seconds and a pre-delay of 20 to 50 milliseconds. This will help fatten out the sound. For your acoustic stringed instruments, try a plate or bright hall also with a reverb length of 1 to 2.5 seconds and a pre-delay of 20 to 80 milliseconds. This gives you some additional room ambiance. And this concludes our tutorial about working with reverb.